So here's the thing. I never thought I'd be the guy writing one of these stories. You know, the kind where everything seems fine on the surface, but underneath, it's a total dumpster fire. But here I am, typing this out because I need to get it off my chest. Maybe some of you can relate, or maybe you'll just judge me. Either way, let's dive in. It all started about a year ago. My wife, let's call her Sarah, and I had been married for 6 years. We weren't perfect, but we were happy, or so I thought. We had the usual ups and downs, but nothing that screamed red flag. We both had decent jobs, a nice house, and a dog we treated like our child. Life was comfortable. But then, things started to change. Sarah became distant. At first, I chalked it up to stress. Her job had gotten more demanding, and she was working longer hours. I tried to be supportive, picking up more chores around the house and giving her space when she needed it. But the more I tried, the more she seemed to pull away. It was the little things that tipped me off. She stopped texting me during the day like she used to. She'd come home late and immediately hop in the shower, which was weird because she never used to do that. And then there were the phone calls. She'd take them in another room, whispering like she didn't want me to hear. I told myself I was being paranoid. I mean, this was Sarah, the woman I'd built a life with. The woman who knew me better than anyone else. There was no way she'd betray me like that, right? But the nagging feeling wouldn't go away. So, one night, I did something I'm not proud of. I checked her phone. I know. Invasion of privacy. Total breach of trust. But I couldn't help myself. I waited until she was asleep, then grabbed her phone from the nightstand. My hands were shaking as I typed in her passcode, which, by the way, was still our anniversary date. Ironic, huh? And there it was. Texts. Lots of them. From a guy named Mark. At first, I tried to rationalize it. Maybe he was just a coworker. Maybe they were just friends. But the more I read, the harder it was to deny what was happening. The messages were flirty, to say the least. They were making plans to meet up, talking about how much they missed each other, and even referencing moments they'd spent together that I knew nothing about. My stomach dropped. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I wanted to wake her up right then and there, demand an explanation, scream, cry, do something. But I didn't. I just put the phone back and lay there, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. The next few days were a blur. I couldn't look at her without feeling sick. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying everything in my head, trying to figure out where I went wrong. Was it something I did? Was I not enough for her? I finally confronted her about it a week later. I couldn't keep it bottled up anymore. I told her I knew about Mark and asked her point blank if she was cheating on me. She didn't even try to deny it. She just looked at me with this blank expression and said, "I'm sorry." Those 2 words shattered me. I'm sorry. That's all she said. No excuses, no explanations, just, I'm sorry. It felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. I stood there, staring at her, waiting for her to say something else, to give me some kind of reason, anything. But she just sat there, silent, like she was waiting for me to explode. And I did. I don't even remember everything I said. It was a blur of anger, hurt, and disbelief. I yelled. I cried. I asked her how she could do this to us, to me. I asked her if she even loved me anymore. She just sat there, tears streaming down her face, but she didn't say a word. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my keys and left. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't be in that house with her. I ended up driving around for hours, my mind racing. I thought about everything we'd been through together, all the plans we'd made, the life we'd built. And now, it was all crumbling down because of some guy named Mark. I thought about leaving her. I really did. I mean, how could I stay with someone who'd betrayed me like that? But then I thought about the good times, the memories we'd shared, the love we'd had. Was it really all gone? When I finally came home, she was still sitting in the same spot, like she hadn't moved at all. She looked up at me, her eyes red and swollen from crying, and said, "I don't want to lose you." I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to believe her, to forgive her and move on. But another part of me was screaming that I'd never be able to trust her again. We talked for hours that night. She told me about Mark, how they'd met at work, how it had started as just a friendship but had turned into something more. She said it wasn't about me, that it was her own issues, her own insecurities, that had led her to cheat. She said she still loved me, that she wanted to make things work. I didn't know what to do. I was torn between wanting to fight for our marriage and wanting to walk away and never look back. In the end, I told her I needed time to think. The next few weeks were hell. We were like strangers living in the same house. We barely spoke, and when we did, it was awkward and forced. I couldn't look at her without thinking about what she'd done, and I could tell she was walking on eggshells around me, afraid to say or do the wrong thing. But slowly, things started to change. We started talking more, really talking, not just about what had happened, but about everything. We went to counseling, and it helped, not right away, but over time. We started to rebuild the trust that had been broken, piece by piece. It wasn't easy. There were days when I wanted to give up, when the pain and anger felt like too much to bear. But we kept working at it, and slowly, things started to get better. It's been a year now, and we're in a better place. I'd be lying if I said everything was perfect. It's not. There are still moments when the hurt comes rushing back, when I wonder if I made the right choice. But I love her, and I believe she loves me. We're both committed to making this work, and that's what matters. Cheating doesn't have to be the end of a relationship. It can be, and sometimes it should be. But for us, it was a wake-up call, a chance to confront the issues we'd been ignoring, and to rebuild something stronger than what we had before. After that initial confrontation, things didn't magically get better overnight. In fact, they got worse before they got better. The weeks that followed were some of the hardest of my life. Every day felt like a battle with my own emotions, with my trust issues, and with the lingering doubt that maybe I was making a mistake by staying. Sarah tried. I'll give her that. She was patient, understanding, and willing to do whatever it took to make things right. She cut off all contact with Mark, even though it meant switching departments at work. She gave me full access to her phone and social media, something I never asked for but appreciated nonetheless. She was transparent about everything, answering every question I had, no matter how painful or repetitive. But even with all her efforts, I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. It was like a shadow that followed me everywhere I went. I'd be fine one moment, and then something would trigger me, a song on the radio, a scene in a movie, even the way she laughed at something, and I'd be right back in that dark place, questioning everything. We started couples therapy, and it was uncomfortable, to say the least. Sitting in that small office, talking about our problems with a stranger, felt like the last thing I wanted to do. But it helped. Our therapist helped us communicate in ways we never had before. She helped us understand the root of our issues, not just the infidelity, but the cracks in our relationship that had been there long before Sarah ever met Mark. One of the hardest parts was learning to forgive. I'm not talking about forgiving Sarah, that came later. I'm talking about forgiving myself. For a long time, I blamed myself for what happened. I kept thinking, if I'd been a better husband, if I'd paid more attention, if I'd been more supportive, maybe this wouldn't have happened. It took a lot of therapy and a lot of late-night conversations with Sarah for me to realize that her choices were her own. I wasn't perfect, but I didn't deserve this. As the months went by, things started to improve. We started dating again, going out for dinner, taking weekend trips, and just spending time together without the weight of everything hanging over us. It was awkward at first, like we were two strangers trying to figure each other out, but slowly, it started to feel natural again. There were setbacks, of course. There were nights when I'd lie awake, wondering if she was thinking about him. There were moments when I'd catch her looking at her phone and feel a pang of jealousy, even though I knew there was nothing to worry about. But we talked through it, every time. We made a promise to each other that we wouldn't let the past destroy our future, and we stuck to it. Now, a year later, I can honestly say we're in a better place than we were before all of this happened. It's not the same, it'll never be the same, but in some ways, it's stronger. We've both grown, both as individuals and as a couple. We've learned to communicate better, to be more honest with each other, and to appreciate what we have. I'm not going to sit here and say that infidelity is a good thing, or that it's something every couple can overcome. It's not. For some people, it's a deal breaker, and that's okay. But for us, it was a wake-up call, a chance to confront the issues we'd been ignoring, and to rebuild something stronger than what we had before. If there's one thing I've learned from all of this, it's that love isn't just a feeling, it's a choice. It's choosing to stay, to fight, to forgive, and to grow, even when it's hard. And for us, it's been worth it. It's been over a year since everything blew up, and life has settled into what I can only describe as a new normal. It's not the life I imagined for us, but it's ours, and we've worked hard to get here. Sarah and I are in a good place now. The anger, the hurt, the constant questioning. It's not gone completely, but it doesn't consume me like it used to. We've learned to live with the scars, and in a weird way, they've made us stronger. We don't take each other for granted anymore. We don't let things fester. If something's bothering us, we talk about it, even if it's uncomfortable. One of the biggest changes is how we communicate. Before all of this, we were great at talking about the surface stuff, work, bills, what to have for dinner, but we struggled with the deeper stuff. Now, we make a point to check in with each other, to ask how we're really feeling, not just how we're doing. It's not always easy, but it's necessary. We've also learned to prioritize each other. Life gets busy, and it's easy to let your relationship take a back seat to everything else. But we've made a conscious effort to carve out time for each other, whether it's a date night, a weekend getaway, or just sitting on the couch together after a long day. There are still moments when the past creeps in. Sometimes, out of nowhere, I'll remember something, a text I read, a look on her face, a conversation we had, and it'll hit me all over again. But those moments are fewer and farther between now, and when they do happen, I don't let them consume me. I've learned to acknowledge the pain, to feel it, and then to let it go. Sarah has been amazing through all of this. She's been patient, understanding, and willing to do whatever it takes to rebuild the trust she broke. She's never once tried to minimize what she did or shift the blame onto me. She's owned her mistakes, and she's worked hard to prove that she's committed to us. As for me, I've learned a lot about myself through this process. I've learned that I'm stronger than I thought, that I'm capable of forgiveness, and that love isn't always easy, but it's worth fighting for. I've also learned that healing isn't linear. There are good days and bad days, and that's okay. I don't know what the future holds for us. I'd like to think we'll continue to grow and thrive, but I know there are no guarantees. What I do know is that we're both committed to making this work, and that's enough for now. If you're going through something similar, I won't tell you what to do. Every relationship is different, and only you can decide what's best for you. But I will say this, don't be afraid to fight for what you want, but don't be afraid to walk away if it's not serving you. You deserve happiness, whether that's with your partner or on your own. As for me, I'm choosing to stay. I'm choosing to believe in us, in the life we've built, and in the love that's brought us this far. It hasn't been easy, but it's been worth it. And that's my story.